Good morning, guys, and welcome back to PCF Online Church this morning. You might be wondering where Steve is. He has taken a well-deserved holiday, and so you guys have got me this week. So maybe you're excited about that, and maybe you've already switched off. But either way, it's great to be with you. It's great to see you guys again on a screen anyway. So this morning, we are going to think a bit more about our next story in Mark. Now, we've already looked at some things that Jesus said in this book. We've talked about how he told people that they needed to have faith like little children. They needed to trust God just like children, instead of trying to harbour all of their wealth and keep all their money for themselves. We also saw that Jesus healed a blind man, and the blind man didn't come to him for healing of his sight. He came to him for mercy. Remember his name? It was Bartimaeus. And he knew that Jesus' mercy and forgiveness was more important than being healed. But Jesus also healed his sight. How amazing was that? And hopefully we've also had a look at a bit about a fig tree last week. I wonder if you can remember anything that was said. Well, today we're going to have a look at somebody in a story that Jesus told who was being stubborn. Now, hopefully you know what the word stubborn means, but if you don't, it really basically means when you want to do something your way and no one else's way. You're not willing to give something up or do something differently because you think you're right. I'm going to show you a little challenge now, and hopefully you will understand a little bit about what it means to be stubborn. So I've got these flying saucers. They've been around for a long time actually, so maybe I shouldn't eat them. But I'm going to do a challenge and see how many I can eat in 1 minute. However, I'm feeling pretty stubborn today, so I'm going to show you what it's like if I'm going to be stubborn about it. So we'll put a timer on for a minute and we'll see how many of these I can get through. So, let's have a look. How are we thinking about this one? It's got a funny colour on the back. I don't know if it smells a little bit. I'm just going to leave that one. I'm going to find a different one. This one. Now this one's blue. I don't really like blue, so I think I'm going to leave this one as well. Let's try this one. Oh, these ones are stuck together. I think that's... I'm probably running out of time a little bit, aren't I? Well, I just don't really want to eat those ones. Can you blame me? Well, let's have a look. There might be one more in here that I could eat. Maybe this. Yeah, let's try this one. Oh, they have definitely... No, I don't think I want to eat that. I don't really think I want to eat any of these, and I think maybe my time's up. Now you see, that was being stubborn, because I probably could have got through most of this bag, right? If I'd actually been trying and not been really, really picky. That was me being stubborn. I didn't want to eat them for whatever reason, and so I kind of failed my challenge. And that's what the story is about today. Someone who was really stubborn and didn't want to listen to what God had to say.
This is the story that Jesus told the religious leaders. There was a man who built a vineyard. He was the owner. He built it from the ground up, made space for the grapes to grow, and dug a hole for the wine to be put in. He even built a tower to keep people safe. Once he'd finished building the vineyard, he decided to rent it out to some tenants, a farmer. He wanted the farmer to look after it and make sure that the wine was being made. So he found a farmer to rent it to. And then the owner went on a trip. Now, the farmer was a great farmer. He harvested the grapes, turned them into wine, and was very good at what he did. One day, the owner got back from his trip and decided to send a servant to go and see the farmer. The owner wanted his share of the grapes, so he sent one of his servants and told him to ask for some grapes. The servant came to the vineyard and spoke to the farmer. He asked if they could have the owner's share of grapes. But the farmer didn't want this to happen. He was pretty angry about being asked this question, and so he beat up the servant and kicked him out. Well, that hadn't gone to plan. The servant went back to the owner and told him what happened. So, a second servant came to the vineyard. He said to the farmer, "The owner would like his share of the grapes." The farmer was still angry. He didn't want to give his share of the grapes to the owner, so he hit the servant on the head and sent him away. The servant went back to the owner and told him what had happened. The owner decided to try one more time and send a third servant. A third servant came to the vineyard and said, "Please, the owner would just like his share of the grapes." The farmer, still angry, told him no, and this time he killed the servant. The owner kept going. He sent more and more servants to try and ask. Some of them were beaten, some of them were hit, some of them were even killed. Finally, the owner realised he only had one person left to send. It was his son. He loved his son very much and thought, "If I send my son, the farmer will surely respect him." So he sent his son to the vineyard. The son went to the vineyard and asked the farmer for his share of the grapes. What do you think the farmer said? No, of course not. And he killed the son. Now, what do you think the owner was going to do? Would he have just left this alone? Of course he didn't. The owner was so angry, he came to the farmer and he killed the farmer. He said, "I asked for my share of grapes, and every time you beat or hit or killed my servants. Even when I sent my son, who I loved, you killed him because you didn't want to give me what was rightfully mine."
So when Jesus had finished telling them that story, the religious leaders that were with him, they didn't like it. They knew that he was talking about them. They knew that Jesus was saying, "You are just like that farmer." And they weren't happy about it. They walked away. They didn't want to hear any more. Now, that story is a little bit like what we do. See, when God made the world and when he sent Jesus to die for us, he was telling us that Jesus should be in charge. We are sinful. Do you remember what sin means? It's when we say no to God, when we ignore him, when we decide that we are in charge. Well, that's what God's saying. He's saying Jesus is supposed to be the king. Jesus is supposed to be in charge because he knows best. He knows exactly how to be in charge and do it well, and we really don't. We get it wrong quite a lot. But when we decide that we want to be in charge of our lives, that's sin. And God was saying, that's not how it should be. So that's what Jesus wanted the religious leaders and us to learn. Are we going to decide to be in charge of our lives and do it how we want? Or are we going to let Jesus be our king and live like he wants us to live? Why don't you talk to your parents today, or whatever grown-ups are with you, about what sin means and what it looks like to live with Jesus as their king?